Hey everybody, from Beantown to your town, this is the
Beantown Beatdown.
Matthew Barris here.
Gabe Shamus coming at you from Beantown.
Yep, cracking open some screwdrivers, Samuel Jackson's favorite beverage from Jackie Brown.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And also Final Four this Saturday night, Oklahoma versus Villanova, and North Carolina versus Syracuse. I would love to see Villanova and North Carolina play each other. Big East versus ACC. Make a good finals in the championship.
Gotcha. Cheers.
Oh, yep. Cheers to that.
And I guess we're getting into the headlines. Already in the headlines.
Yep. I get into some headlines. First and foremost, this Friday night. Actually, tomorrow night, because this episode will be uploaded today.
Gotcha.
Adrian the Problem Broner putting his WBA super lightweight title on the line against Ashley Theophane on Premier Boxing Champions on Spike. This should be a good fight. Adrian Broner making his first title defense against Mayweather's protege. A lot of attention going into this fight because Broner and TMT had a falling out. He says that he respects Mayweather, but he doesn't like the guys in his camp that were talking about him, talking shit about him.
Right.
And also, but of course, this has come at a worse time because Adrian Broner is being suspected in a assault charge.
Oh, gotcha.
Apparently, he lost a high-stakes gambling bowling event to a guy, lost a lot of money, and the guy says that he robbed him at gunpoint, pistol whipped him, and robbed him and took his money in Cincinnati, which is where Broner's from.
Gotcha.
So, of course, after this fight, win, lose, or draw, Broner's going to have to deal with the situation, and, of course, we'll keep you updated on that as we find out more information. But it should be a good fight, and I'm going to be there with my Dominoes and my Bud Light Margarita watermelons and watch the fight.
Gotcha.
And also, Dancing with the Stars update, Paige VanZant, despite her partner suffering a back injury, she did pretty well once again.
Okay.
Once again, she was on the show. She danced pretty well. And actually, the tough judge, the old guy, I forget his name, but he was actually impressed.
Well, yeah. I don't know much about him, but I know it's hard to get him impressed. So there you go.
Oh yeah. He's a hard ass.
Yep.
But unfortunately, Geraldo got voted off. I mean, he was in the bottom three with Flutie and Misha Barton. And so Geraldo won't be on there anymore. But hey, it's not the worst thing to happen to Geraldo. I mean, i.e. the Al Capone thing. Or the time he got his nose broken when he got hit with a chair by one of those neo-Nazi guys. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure Geraldo's just shaking that off right
exactly. Shake it off.
Oh, yeah. And last but not least, we saved the best news for last, UFC 200. First and foremost, the rematch is going down. Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz Part 2.
Nice.
Oh, man, and it's once again going to be at 170. This is going to be a huge rematch, and I cannot wait for this. But also, the undercard is just as great as well. I mean, we got Jose Aldo making his first fight back since losing to McGregor, that 13-second knockout. He's going in a rematch against Frankie Edgar, and this is for the interim featherweight title because McGregor is still the real champion, but he's not defending this belt, so they're making an interim title fight.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure in the winner of this fight will definitely fight McGregor. And then, of course, Cain Velasquez, he's coming back. He's fighting. I forget who he's fighting, but also on the other card, Takanori Gomi, Japanese legend. He's taking on Jim Miller, and so far the card looks good. The fight's going down July 9th, and that is going to be the hugest event for the UFC this year. at least until they get to the Garden.
Gotcha.
UFC 200. And
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely. And that rematch, I mean, I saw that fight at the Causeway Bar.
Mm-hmm.
It was humongous, and I can't wait for that rematch.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly.
And now we're getting into Macho Doesn't Mean This. So, Gabe, this is actually one of the last things you're doing on sexuality and fighting.
Yes, exactly.
So.
There's the last in my series on sexuality. So, I've talked twice, I guess, about bringing sex into fighting, basically, or sex into combat sports, violence, whatever. So now I'm kind of going the opposite way. And I think I've talked about this in a previous episode a long time back, where there's also a lot of people are interested in bringing fighting, roughness, violence, whatever you want to say, into sex. So that's a whole other thing, actually. One of the things that's really popularized this is the movie 50 Shades of Grey. And we talked about that before. It's a movie completely about how this billionaire guy has this whole secret life, and it involves all sorts of kinky stuff, and basically kind of rough or violent, however you want to look at it, stuff, in his sex life. So I think that there's, like I've said, if you've listened to me, you know that I think we should be a lot more open about sex and a lot more open about our desires and what they actually mean, and that if we face those desires, and if we face those the secret ideas that we have, that they won't be as dangerous as we think. Well, we should control them instead of some people. It ends up controlling you. You should control them instead of them controlling you.
Yeah, exactly. Also I got a little funny story about 50 Shades of Grey. When it came out last year, that was actually one of my plans for Valentine's Day. I wanted to get a girl and go see
oh yeah, I remember
50
that.
Shades of Grey, And I suggested it one time to my
also interesting that it came out on Valentine's Day. That's a completely mainstream way to go about it, and usually a holiday for like mainstream lovey-dovey blah blah. This time it was like, no, Valentine's Day is about the kink.
Well, yeah, smart move.
Yeah,
but so anyways, I was talking to my mentors about it, and I said, like, well, if I there's this girl, I think it was your roommate at your last apartment, and I was like, yeah, if I do wind up going on a date, I have the plans on taking her to the movies and dinner. And they said, well, what movie do you plan on taking her to see? And I said, 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
And of course, my mentor Louise was like, no, what are you doing? Don't you? What about this? The subject of the movie? And I said, and I understood. I was like, no, but I said, like, well, I'm not going there just for that. For the kinky stuff. I said, like,
right.
Well, I'm watching it to see Dakota Johnson's acting chops. Because it was like her first big movie. Her being Dawn Johnson and Melanie Griffith's daughter. It was I was like, oh, I just want to see how her acting chops is. And she's like, no, but she might get disturbed because it's about whips and chains, and so it was like, so that idea was scratch. Of course, I didn't get a date, and I didn't wind up seeing the movie, and I didn't wind up getting my dick wet. Actually,
but that's an interesting idea. I think that was actually, I think if you found the right girl, that would actually have been a good move on your part. I think that was a good idea.
In fact, I actually wound up. I went on a couple porn sites, and I saw like the X-rated scenes, and then when I went on Xfinity, I saw it on HBO, and I saw I saw the movie, though I mostly watched the sex scenes again. But it's an okay movie. It's not the best movie, but it's not the worst movie. And of course, there's going to be a sequel coming out, I think, next year. So
interesting. Yeah, so a chance to talk about it again. Because, it's, there's really nothing that has brought it into the mainstream as that. You know, and then she was Dakota Johnson was on SNL after it came out, and there's just all sorts of funny stuff about it, of course.
Oh yeah, I actually saw that episode, man. That was she was funny on that episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they, you know, just like the movie, they push the envelope. You know, there was they like you know how sometimes they have like you know, like cast in the audience to like heckle the person, you know, and like make the dialogue, you know, about whatever it is. So this time they had you know, cast in the audience again, but it was like they pretended to be random fans of the movie, and there was this one where they're like they dressed him up to look older, I think, because that was part of the joke, and it was like Vanessa Bayer and whatever, and she's like looking all old, and she's like, my husband and I would just want to thank you, because your movie helped open up so many things in our marriage. And he's like, it brings her husband, and she's like, and we found Diego here. It's another man. And he was like, I think they even went as far as having like a ball gag in his mouth, and they're like, we've just been so happy with him, and we've been playing around thanks to the influence of your movie. And Dakota's like, thank you.
Yeah, and then
move along.
Yeah, and then there was, and of course she had her parents there in the
right,
audience.
That.
And they're talking about, like, she said, like, they had sex backstage when Melanie hosted it, and she was conceived, and
right.
They were. I mean, if I was her parents, I'd just be like, I would have been like, stop.
Exactly. And actually, like she said, you know, there is that whole like interesting dynamic about what the parents think, what will family members think. She actually said, and another joke was you probably know 50 Shades of Grey as the book that made you never want to touch your mom's Kindle again.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, obviously this is a phenomenon. You know, obviously there actually is something here that we're not. That up until then we didn't want to address. So I think it's actually important to think about that we actually want these things. They say the heart wants what it wants. That's true. But also, you know, the other certain organs, sexual organs, want what they want as well. And so, you know, I think I've talked about this before. I've known people that, you know, that personally do almost exclusively kinky stuff for, you know, in the bedroom, and they're actually a lot better at maybe not better, but they're just as good, if not better, at talking about what they want, what they don't want, and their boundaries. The thing is, people think, well, then, you know, this pushes it too far, blah, blah. But people that do participate in this stuff actually know their boundaries and know how to talk about their boundaries. And, you know, the whole thing of a safe word, you know, came out of this. The reason for a safe word is, you know, maybe it's part of the fantasy to for someone to say no or stop, and I don't judge that as long as you respect someone's boundaries. So, you know, there has to be a way to actually stop it if something, you know, if you're not comfortable with what's happening. So that's why, you know, people that, you know, have been doing kinky stuff for decades, they came up with this. They said, well, okay, instead of it being no or stop, which, you know, can get confusing, we're just going to have a safe word beforehand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta have boundaries, you know, and when you're in that kind of relationship and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, now personally, I haven't partaken in it, although I would like to. I mean, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, I've been watching a lot of porn, and it does look exciting to me. But I'll tell you one thing I won't do. My boundary is I ain't gonna have no strap on in my ass, okay? Because I've watched. Because let me tell you something. I've watched, like, for example, did you see Deadpool?
Oh no, I haven't seen it yet.
Well, there's a scene in Deadpool, right, where It was like a montage when him and his girlfriend are having, they have a sex montage and stuff.
Right.
There's one part where he's fucking her doggy style, for Valentine's Day. He goes, don't just relax, baby. It's Valentine's Day. And then there's a part where she goes, relax, baby. It's National Women's Day, and she's dressed in lingerie, and she's got a strap on, and she is fucking him in the ass.
Right.
Okay. Listen, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's that girl. By the way, her name is Maureen Buchanan. She's on Gotham as well.
Okay.
And actually, her and the guy, Benji McKenzie, they just had a baby too.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So like, it was that girl. Let me tell you, I don't care if you're Marina. I don't care if you're Giselle, Katy Perry, even Lady Gaga. There's no way, there's no way I'm letting a strap on get in my ass. No, fuck no.
Yeah. There's actually a scene in the show Weeds where
I remember that episode. I remember that episode.
Yeah, exactly. So Yael, you said it doesn't matter if it's whoever. Yael, add to the list. She was the hot Israeli woman that. Anyway, she wasn't interested in him because he wasn't. At first she wasn't interested in him because he wasn't like completely like manly, take her over type of thing. Yeah. And so anyway, but then she said, well, she's bisexual, and she was then like, well, you do have the qualities that I find attractive in a woman, so we could do that. Anyway, he doesn't know what's happening until it's actually happening. That then she brings out the strap on. But so anyway, that goes into changing gender roles and things like that, which I think a fair amount of us also want to do. There's all sorts of reports of these really completely rich and powerful men. They could hire a prostitute to do whatever they want, and they hire there's a lot of reports that a fair amount of them hire dominatrixes instead. Dominatrix. Anyway. Dominatrix. But yeah, anyway, so and that means that and I think it's because since they're so powerful and they boss people around and run people's lives like in the public sector, when it comes down to it, they actually want to, in the bedroom, they actually want to switch that role. Whether you want to call it be feeling guilty or not, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I think they want to experience the other side of it, and they so when they could hire a woman to do whatever they want to them, a fair amount of them will actually hire a woman to dominate them instead, and
vice versa.
Yeah.
By the way, a little personal question. I know you're gay and stuff, and you like Lady Gaga, but listen, if would you let Lady Gaga put on a strap on and fuck you in the ass? Seriously.
That's the question. So I actually have watched feminine domination, whatever you want to call it, videos, and I have actually gotten hard to that idea. Actually, fuck me in the ass, I don't know, but yeah, I would watch it in a second, and I might consider it. Yeah, I'm usually more of a top, but I might consider it.
Yeah, because it's Lady Gaga. It's like she's the, it's the mother. She calls herself the mother of all the gays, and right. It's like
she's our mother monster, and we're the little monsters.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, let me tell you something. I think Lady Gaga could turn. I think Lady Gaga would probably turn you straight. Trust me, women like Lady Gaga, Katy Perry. Forget the strap on. If you actually put her dick in her pussy, trust me, you'll definitely turn straight. You'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. What have I been missing out? Fuck the men. I'm going with this chick.
Not turn me straight, because nothing can actually turn someone straight. But consider having a complete experience with a woman. Yes. Anyway, and yeah, this is also, of course, a whole thing, in the gay culture as well. I think just as just as there's a complete difference of, what different people like sexually, in straight life, there's the same with gay life. So there's, there's plenty of us that, just want to be romantic, or, or if it does get wild in the bedroom, it stays within certain bounds. And then there's plenty of us that want to be kinky as well. So yeah, I mean, it goes all ways, and I think I've said this before. I think a lot of times it does come down to our animal instincts. We love it when the animal drive takes over, and so that can be just regular wild sex, or that can be using certain implements like ropes and paddles, and I'm frankly a fan of, and things like that. It's interesting when we think about, like 50 Shades of Grey, bringing this into the mainstream. It also, I think also, like I said, it came out on Valentine's Day, thus changing the whole definition of Valentine's Day and of love and whatever. He actually says in the movie, "I don't do romance."
Oh yeah.
I remember, but then of course they have a relationship, So what does that mean? People used to not be able to comprehend that, but I think it's becoming more.
Well, that's the power of Dakota Johnson's pussy.
Exactly. Exactly, my friend. But yeah, so I mean that's it is kind of like that, and I think people have room to sway both ways, and one of the songs, there was actually many big soundtrack was made for the movie, and including Sia, who I love, and other such performers, and one of the main songs that was the music video for the movie was Ellie Goulding, "Love Me Like You Do." Love me like you do, love me like you do. So like the fact that she made her music video for that song about that movie, it actually made me want to see it. That music video about it. So like that song by itself could have been interpreted, one way, the romantic love side, and yet, they used it this way, and so it's a very interesting thing. And and also speaking about like switching roles and playing around with gender, she does say in the song, "I'll let you set the pace, 'cause I'm not thinking straight." I think, I remember being like, I bet a lot of people are actually uncomfortable with that, because, that does kind of play with the normative perception of gender roles. Like, I think a lot of people, when they hear that, and being like, well, you're a woman, you should let him set the pace. What do you mean? Like, I'll let you set the pace, as if it's only this time. So, I think she purposely did that to sort of play around with gender, and play around with how we think about sexual positions and sexual timing and the act, you know what I mean?
Right. And also another thing I want to ask, because like I've noticed almost for about like maybe a decade now, it's like we've seen this trend in movies where it's like famous books have become movies. Like,
yes,
it started with Harry Potter, and then from the Harry Potter came Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Then from Lord of the Rings came Twilight,
Mm-hmm.
and then Chronicles of Narnia,
mm-hmm.
and then Divergent.
Yeah, exactly. Divergent.
Hunger Games, and now
Mm-hmm.
with
and
50
by
Shades
the
of
way,
Grey.
yeah, exactly. Also, the Golden Compass. By the way, I think that actually, whatever was said about it, I think that actually was a good movie, and they should have tried for a sequel. But anyway.
Yeah. So like, what's gonna be the next? What do you think is gonna be the next book that becomes a famous movie? Because it's like Divergent right now is gone. I mean, I don't know what you thought about the last Divergent. They said it was bad.
No, I watched it. I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, but 50 Shades of Grey now is the new thing now. I mean,
well, with the sequel coming out.
Yeah, the sequel coming out.
I was
but
about
it's
to
like
say, not many people were talking about it before, but I guess with the sequel, it'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, what's gonna be the next big thing? What's gonna be
Right.
the next book series that becomes a movie?
Right. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, yeah. We also forgot the Da Vinci Code. There was the Da Vinci Code and Angels.
Oh
and
yeah,
Demons.
Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I've heard that. I don't know. I'm hoping that they're actually in discussion about if they're gonna do another movie of that, because there's been like other books, and I do love Inferno. Inferno was a fantastic book and just crazy twists and turns. So there might be that, but yeah, in terms of like the next actual series, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure other people have been reading, young adult fiction, and like, oh yeah, this is the one. This is the one. I don't know. Oh, and then not a movie, but Game of Thrones is television phenomenon, right? And that's from a book. That's from a book series. And what's interesting about that is that going back to topic, that actually has brought sex, front and center, at least more than other fantasy genres, and more than a lot of genres, I guess. So that's another thing. And when he was interviewed about it, George R.R. Martin said, "Well, I didn't think I was doing anything revolutionary." So he said, "Sex has always been so important in society, and it's always been like a sort of hidden driving force." So he's like, "Why would it be revolutionary to bring sex into this book about the struggle for power?"
Yeah, but also keep in mind, that show's like on HBO, so
right.
It's like, when
they
it
definitely
comes,
can do a lot more.
Yeah, when it comes to sex on television, it's like, HBO, they can get away with a whole lot of shit.
Yes, that others will not.
I mean, FX, they can get away with some shit. I mean, like when I was watching American Horror Story and seeing that dude from the New Girl getting
everyone's talked about it.
Yeah, he got ass raped, and I was watching. I was like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. And you could not watch New Girl the same way again. I know.
Can you also imagine? Can you imagine him?
I thought he was hot too.
Yeah, well, can you imagine him, Zoe Deschanel, and all the other cast members, all of them sitting together watching it? Guys be like, dude, you let them fuck you in the ass?
I know. Yeah, that would be interesting for him to explain to his castmates. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and so yeah, I think it comes down to that. The point I wanted to get to is that I think that there are certain things. There are certain things that I think we actually want to achieve in sex, besides just sex. Obviously, we want to achieve sex. That's a given. That's pretty much been understood since before any of this conversation happened. But I think there are certain things we want to achieve in sex, and that's why some people want to be submissive and some people want to be dominant. And so I think this. I think you can be completely dominant without extra implements, but then I think there's the reason people want to go there with ropes and whips, paddles, whatever, is A, the animal drive, and then B, it's about fulfilling something in yourself. So if someone who there can be many reasons that you want to be dominant, and you're sort of fulfilling that, and then there can be many reasons why you want to be submissive, and you're fulfilling that. And so it's just I think it's the same thing people do in regular sex, but just to a higher level. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, whatever floats a person's boat. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that there's actually something that you're going for. And I think again, you should control that instead of letting it control you. And we've talked about it before, sexual crime and all that stuff,
Yeah.
It's not a good thing, not for it. But I think a lot of it actually comes not from being too permissive, too loose about it. That's what a lot of close-minded people say. It's like, oh well, we're getting too permissive, we're getting too loose, we're too blah blah blah, and the whole moral fabric thing. I think that there are morals, but it's a very different thing than what a lot of people say when they say the moral fabric, and it's not that we're getting too loose with it. It's that we have all sorts of other psychological and sociological problems, and if you don't take control of it, it could take control of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that saying, everything in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Even you have to take moderation into moderation.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, man, very intriguing and very funny conversation we had, and now leading into chew on this. Well, several months back, Joe Rogan on his podcast, the powerful Joe Rogan channel, the Joe Rogan Experience.
Right.
He had Demetrius Johnson, the current UFC flyweight champion, on there. And Joe Rogan did reveal that his contract with the UFC is up in August. And so this summer, it's going to be interesting to see if Joe Rogan is going to stay with the UFC. And well, he said in the interview, he said, like, well, the thing is about me is that I always like trying new different things. I like doing I like doing comedy shows. Like, I like to do comedy shows, like, because he does the Laugh Factory, he does like the Comedy Store and the Laugh Factory out in LA where he lives, where he mostly does his work. But he says, like, I like doing comedy shows in different clubs. I like to just pop in different clubs and do comedy shows. Actually, he's going to be in Boston this Friday and Saturday at the Wilbur Theater.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, had I known sooner, I would have probably tried to get some tickets. I mean, granted, money's tight right now, but I still would have loved to see Joe Rogan live in concert because he's funny as fuck. But he also says, like, I like trying new things. I like doing new things. He says, like, sometimes I like to get in my car and I like going to different towns. I just like to get in my car and just drive.
Right.
So, as a human being, as just not as a fight fan or as a host of the show, as a human being, it's like, if he were to leave and knowing that he likes to do new things, it's like, you know what, man? Hey, God bless you, man. Hey, God bless you, man. But
right.
But as a
and
fight
you might
fan,
want to see his like new comedy and whatever.
His new stuff. But as a fight fan, I'm just like, no, don't leave.
Gotcha.
Because it's like, I mean, Joe Rogan has been with the UFC since 1997. It was at UFC 12 when Mark Coleman lost to Maurice Smith. And at that, Joe Rogan wasn't actually doing commentary. He was just doing backstage interviews.
Right.
And around that time, I think News Radio had just come on, so he was still on News Radio with Andy Dick, before... Actually, I think he was still doing drugs. But, so, and then later on, as the UFC started getting a little bigger, and then Joe was doing Fear Factor and stuff like that, then he started doing commentary and stuff like that. And Joe Rogan is really, in the history of commentary, he is one of the best commentary guys ever to do commentary. I mean, because he's a black belt in Taekwondo. He's studied jiu-jitsu, and that's why whenever you watch UFC fights and you see guys in like submission holds, he's like, oh, he's setting him up the position. Oh, he's got to roll out of this. He's got to do this. He's got to roll out of there.
Right.
And and plus, he's so enthusiastic about fights too. I mean, after interviews, he's like, "That was a fantastic performance, man. That fight was balls to the walls."
Right.
And when he sees knockouts, he's like, "Unbelievable, unbelievable! What a fantastic I mean, he is so enthusiastic.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's almost like you gotta be. You gotta make it. You know, make it fun. Make it. You know, like exciting and even more exciting. And yeah, that is interesting. Also, that you talked about his background. He's coming from very different. You know, a lot of different backgrounds, and that can help. You know, when he to really know what he's talking about when he does these commentaries and whatnot.
Well, yeah. Also, he's yeah. I mean, Joe Rogan. I mean, like he's been there almost as long as, or I think about the same time as Mike Goldberg and his co-host.
Uh-huh.
And it's gonna be, if Joe Rogan does decide to leave in August, it's like who's gonna replace Joe? I mean, like I know a lot of people will probably think like, well, you know, on Fox because of UFC does fights on Fox Sports One too. It's like, well, you know, there's Dustin Cormier, there's um, you know, there's a lot of guys out there, Kenny Florian, and
Right.
it's
Right.
like all due respect to those guys who work there, including John Anik, but you know they can't hold a candle to Joe Rogan. What separates Joe Rogan from John Anik and the ex fighters who also do commentaries, that Joe Rogan isn't really a fighter. He doesn't have a journalistic background. He's more like a regular guy who's done martial arts and
Right.
you know and stuff like that. It's like he's a regular, no pun intended, a regular Joe. He's like
Right.
you and me.
Right, exactly, and that's probably part of his appeal, and probably how he, you know, it's almost like you need the outside perspective of a fan, you know, of a spectator to have as much energy and enthusiasm as he does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I've learned so much about fighting in terms of mixed martial arts from Joe Rogan. You know, because like you know, the way he explains how a fighter does his striking, or how, you know, like when he's talked about you know, the Diaz brothers and their way of striking, and or like the way a person does jujitsu and stuff. It's like I actually got that from Joe, and there are times when me and my brother will be watching UFC, you know, and you know, I'll be like, well, you know, this is how he does it, and you know, like he does this, they do that, and the third, and I get all the technical stuff I get from Joe Rogan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I explain to him, and like my brother, he gets on me sometimes about like not like there's a random fight on, and if I don't know the fighter and I don't pick, he's like, well, why don't you just pick? And I go like, well, I have to know who the fighters are, I have to know their strength and weaknesses, and I explain to him like the science of it. It's like the science in basketball. It's like, you know, Michael Jordan. You know, it's like, okay, what defense do you use on Michael Jordan? Do you use a 2-3 zone? Do you use a half court? Do you use a full court press? What do you do to shut him down? The same thing with fighting. It's like, okay, you know, do you use leg kicks? Do you fight close? Do you fight from a distance? You know, do you strike? You know, and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and so I mean, it is having to know that science, and sometimes it's again from an outsider's perspective or a fan's perspective. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, like, to bring in the enthusiasm, but also to really calculate which side, you know, might come out victorious. That type of thing.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, you kind of. I mean, it's analytics. You know, I guess you could say Joe Rogan is I guess you could call him analytics without being like going to like, you know, being like those NBA analytics. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like
Yeah,
having, not
analytics
going to
without
school,
being too without being
having-
too numbers oriented, to like, you know, math oriented.
Yeah, exactly. And you know all that stuff I learned from Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's hard to imagine watching a UFC fight without Joe Rogan. I mean, I've watched UFC fights without him, like when I watch the fights on Fox Sports 1, because Joe normally he just does the fights on Fox 25, or sorry, just Fox. He does it on Fox, and then he does the pay-per-view fights.
Right.
On Fox Sports 1, he doesn't do them.
Okay.
But it's like it's going to be hard if he does decide to leave. How do you watch a UFC fight without Joe Rogan?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joe said also in the interview, he said like Joe would still be a fan, he would still watch and stuff like that. But it's like without Joe Rogan, you know, it's
not the same thing, right?
Yeah,
right.
like for example, you're a big baseball fan, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, you're a baseball fan. Like who's the who's the big commentary for San Francisco Giants? The San Francisco Giants. Like, who's the big guy in commentary?
I know his voice and I know who you're talking about, but I can't tell you his name. So
okay, well,
that's not going to work.
Okay, well, imagine watching a game, a local game without him, or like
right.
Or like when you watch basketball. Like I grew up a basketball fan, and I grew up with Marv Albert. You know, it's like basketball without Marv Albert. It's like, you know, where's Marv Albert?
Right, exactly. You know what it's like. What I would say it's like is it's like actually all the Apple products. You know, Steve Jobs was like the big creator genius, and he would do these amazingly enthusiastic presentations of the new products, you know what I mean, and he really put everyone talks about how he put a personal touch into all of it, you know, and he wanted to like make sure that each new product, like, he personally signed off on it because, you know, it was that important to him. So some people were like, how can I ever get an iPhone after the 5S? That was the last one that he personally had a hand in after he died, you know. So the new CEO is doing good, you know, doing what he can, but yeah, for some people it's like, how can it ever be the same without Steve Jobs, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I know everybody says, well, to quote Abby Lee Miller, and I kind of hate quoting her, you know, with her being such a bitch, you know, she has this saying on Dance Mom. She says everybody's replaceable, and to an extent, that is true. But it's like, but when it comes to the UFC, it's like you can't replace Joe. Right. You can't. I mean,
it's true, but it's also not true because some people like Joe, like Steve Jobs, like, you know, whatever you can, you know, example you can think of. Some people make it so much part of the brand that how could you could you replace them? Well,
if Joe Rogan were to leave, the only people I could probably see fill into that spot is, one, WWE's, well, he's not with WWE now, he does New Japan Pro Wrestling, Jim Ross, because Jim Ross has said that he would like to call an MMA fight. He called a Golden Boy Promotions boxing match a couple of years back, and then he's doing New Japan Pro Wrestling on Access TV. But he is a big MMA fan, huge MMA fan, and he says that he would have loved to do an MMA fight. So if I'm Dana White, you know, I'd be like, hey, get Jim Ross in.
Right.
And also, I think Kevin James I could also see Kevin James replacing Joe Rogan too, because Kevin James, just like Joe Rogan, is a comedian and stuff, but he's also a big MMA fan. He actually trained with Boss Rutan to lose weight back in 2006, 2007, and of course there was that movie Here Comes the Boom.
Oh, right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, Kevin James he's friends with a lot of fighters, including Rampage Jackson. Yeah, he was actually there when Rampage knocked out Chuck Liddell, and Kevin James was there with Adam Sandler, and they both went backstage, and Kevin was like, "Yeah, man, you know, you kicked his ass." And Rampage didn't recognize Adam Sandler at first. He says, "Hey, who are you?" And Adam goes, "I am Bobby Boucher." Yeah.
Right. Nice. Yeah, so, you know, here's hoping, right? Here's hoping that we can find someone.
You know, like I said, you know, as a human being, you know, because I know, you know, Joe likes to do new things, and it's good that you do new things, and it's like, you know, if he does, hey, God bless you. But as a fighting fan, it's just like, no, Joe, please don't leave. Please stay with the UFC,
right.
Man. The UFC needs you.
Right.
And, you know, so that's what I mean, but for now, we still got Joe, and, you know, until, we'll have to wait till August, and we'll see if they do renew his contract, or better. Also, I just thought of some other people that could replace Joe Rogan. Well, you and me.
Right.
Hey, Dana, if you're watching this, hey, Dana, you know, we could use a job. I mean, granted, you and I are going to fight over that job, but who knows? Maybe we could use a gay commentator on, for the UFC.
Right. The other time I talked about, about gay fighters and how we're trying to get more of those, so yeah, why not? Anyway, we should end it here.
Oh, yeah. Also, well, before we end it here, I know I said I don't like Abby Lee Miller. I mean, personality-wise, I don't like her, but she is beautiful. I mean, I've actually told my friends getting back to rough sex and all, I would have dirty, angry sex with her. I just pull her by the hair, as I'm doing her doggy style, just like, yeah, you're going to be nice to those kids, aren't you? Yeah, you're going to be nice to those fucking kids.
Yeah,
aren't you, bitch? Yeah, a lot of people will call that rape, but it's like, no, it wouldn't be rape.
See, wanting to achieve something through sex. There we go.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm going to try something else I've never tried before. There.
Wow.
Bending the cap.
Damn. But, okay, and just to let you people know, for our next show, we're going to be doing a special preview of Bradley versus Pacquiao 3. Mm-hmm. And also Gabe will have something else for Macho Doesn't Mean This.
Yeah.
So it won't be entirely on that fight. We'll have a little something there. But also check us out on Bloody Knuckles TV on YouTube. Subscribe, comment. And last week I was supposed to do a blog, but it wasn't set up. But now we got it set up, so I'll be doing my blog today. So check that out, man.
All right. Yep.
And until then, from Beantown to your town, this is the Beantown Beatdown, saying Vios con Dios. And another thing, in spirit of the NCAA playoffs, go Tar Heels.
All right.
Go Tar Heels.